Perry Como's Craft Music Hall will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you the following Perry Como's Craft Music Hall will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm on with one of my favorite podcasters, a guy that I've gotten to know, I don't know how many years now, 6 years, something like that.
At least,
and,
right?
At least. And it's always good to talk to Sal Crivelli, who, beyond being the host of Comic Pop, we're all pretty excited for Sal because he's going to join the ranks of comic book writers and is writing, as suggested in the title of this episode, he's writing the backup feature for the Terminator for Dynamite. Front feature, it's Declan Shalvey, and I'm intrigued. But welcome, Sal. I'm excited for this opportunity for you, man.
Thank you so much. I too am excited for this opportunity, and what an opportunity it is. I get to put my money where my proverbial mouth is, and actually, because I'm known in the industry as being a bit of a critic and having my own very strong opinions, and now I'm going to have work out there and have it be equally criticized and discussed. And the only thing I'm hoping to do at this point is tell a damn fun story that supports and sells Declan Shalvey's ongoing Terminator series.
That's great, man. Well, and again, you come with a built-in audience, and as evidenced by Peyton's comment here, not even a big Terminator fan, but I've been subscribing to Comic Pop since I was 14, a little over 10 years now. I'm buying 2 copies. There you go.
Oh, so, wow, that's cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, music to Nick Barrucci's ears that you're.
Hell yeah! Exactly. I should tell you, folks. Just before we get into the nitty gritty and into the deep, I should mention that the best way to do it, the best way to help. And we've said it before, and I'll say it again, pre-order your books. If you like a book and you want to see it, you want to get it, you should pre-order it. The final order cutoff, or FOC, as you've heard it before, is on September 16th, which incidentally is also the same FOC. It means that the same day that it releases, which will be on October 9th, it's the same day as Absolute Batman. So when you're pre-ordering your Absolute Batman, you can add Terminator to the mix, and then you get both books on the same day. You make sure you get a copy.
Why not? I'm intrigued by what you might be doing.
Oh, thank you.
With the backup feature because, again, showing my age, but back in the day, the Marvel black and whites of Planet of the Apes really kind of showed us the rest of the ape world. And we got so many stories that didn't involve Zira or Cornelius or Dr. Zaius and all those people. Yeah. But we really didn't see how life on the planet beyond Ape City was and everything. So what can you tell us about your backup feature?
Okay, so I can talk a little bit about the fact that it will be in the actually there's very little I could talk about when it comes to specifics, but I can say that it is very much a tried and true Terminator story that only helps to support the world that Declan Shalvey is building with his Terminator book. Declan's plan for Terminator as a series is deliberate and it is very much in keeping with the world of the first Terminator movie, and talking about like all the implications thereof, and giving you a world of interesting characters that maybe not necessarily in the same scope as the usuals, like the Connors, so to speak, but will definitely build towards that world. And my job as the backup writer is to support that in its own way. Though I can say that it is an independent story. It's not like Declan's doing one story and then I'm like, and then you saw a character over there. Well, here he is. No. It's its own kind of story with its own characters, but in the same kind of tonal and thematic world as the main series.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I can't say too much because we're so in the weeds with it right now. Like I've only just recently gotten a lot of the ducks in a row, so to speak. But I can say that the writing has been a lot of fun and it's been challenging, which has been wonderful. I've written for a long time. A lot of folks don't know. People think if you've been doing YouTube for 10 years, that's all you have done because 10 years is such a long time. But you and I both know that 10 years can evaporate like, so many tears in rain. And so before that, I was very much a writer, or at least an aspiring writer, and I'd written a number of things, all of it pushed desperately to different outlets, and I'd written a number of things for both. I'd written a TV pitch. I'd written movies. I've written so many different comic books, none of which for any of the publishers, but for myself.
Okay.
And those pursuits have only gotten better as I learned more and read more, and I've been so grateful that I've had this opportunity to like stretch and exercise that muscle again, because when it comes to making YouTube videos, it's like it's all encompassing. You talk about a book, you take the video, you make sure that everything's working, lighting, sound, video, color balance, and then you edit it all together. By the time you're done with one video, it's been 12 hours. So it's like doesn't leave a lot of room for creative writing and stuff like that. So I'm excited to have been given this opportunity.
I understand, man. Well, that's why I do my shows live, and I'm like, it's all right. It is what it is. Here we go.
That is such a godsend.
Well, coming from live radio and stuff, it's like, no, this is how I've broadcasted for most of my career. So why not?
Yeah. No, and thank God for these guys, like the StreamYard thing, the new system that has been put in place. Whether it's this, I've seen other programs like this, but enabling the live format and how ubiquitous it's become, like how many different podcasts all stream live and how much easier it is to just go, hey, sit down, shoot, and then go like, that was the show, as honest and raw as it could be. Well,
I want to acknowledge Langley, who enjoys both of our shows, and it's great to see Langley on a chat. It's been a while, and I hope his health is well. He's a good Southside Chicago guy. Another guy who's getting his career going as far as writing comics. He was doing a little Marvel UK work. I know that.
That's fantastic.
Where's the comment that I wanted to put up where someone said, hey, when are you guys ever going to do a panel together at a convention? I'm sure we both love it. Yeah, I'm sure we both love it. It's just a matter of us both being at the same show. I know that Sal's going to be at Baltimore, and I know he's going to be in New York.
I have to correct you, unfortunately, in that regard. Normally, I go to Baltimore, and I haven't missed a Baltimore in a long, long time. But this year, I do have to miss Baltimore, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yep, I've got family obligations that are coming up the following weekend, and it's just I can't. I can't risk it. I can't risk anyone in the family getting any contagious diseases or anything like that. So right now, we're gonna have to pump the brakes. But I promise you, 2025. It's gonna be one hell of a Baltimore Comic Con, but New York Comic Con, big time. Oh yeah, no, and I understand you will not be at New York Comic Con, so it works out perfectly.
Yeah, I won't be at Baltimore. I won't be at New York. I don't know when my next show is. I just did Terrificon a couple weeks ago, and it was great.
Yeah,
Gar, you're right. I don't know how Sal and I missed each other at C2E2, but we did
multiple times. It was actually really unfortunate that we were physically in the same space multiple times, you and I, where we would be like, "Hey, there you are," and playing phone tag, and it just didn't work out. My C2E2 was an odd experience. It was my first C2E2. It was my first time really in Chicago, and spent a lot of time mostly as a tourist, just kind of walking around and eating different food. It was just,
summer in Chicago, one of the best places to be. I'll tell you right now, the current temperature is in the 90s, but usually we have comfortable weather, and it also extends well into October and even early November sometimes.
Wow.
So yeah, and again, it was great. I saw years ago, not that long ago, I guess, within the last 10 years, I saw Carol Burnett live at the Chicago Theater.
That's cool.
And she was so cute. And she was just like, oh, yeah, it was a great show. And for, at the time, 80 whatever she was, incredibly high energy, literally running around the stage for the first half of the show. And she's like, okay, now I'm going to sit down. But she's like, man, Chicago, the food is incredible. I always heard. And I haven't been here in so long. And it's like, yeah, we're a good food town. I mean, not just pizza and hot dogs. No, we do pretty good. So,
yeah. I did do that was the thing that everybody was like suggesting, and it's one of those things where I've very much, I've been like, Chicago deep dish pizza for me. I like it, but I prefer a classic New York slice myself.
I respect that, absolutely, man. Well, that's and the crazy thing is, although it's harder to find a real New York style outlet for giant slices that you fold and stuff like that, but. I always like to point out to people that, and then I, with no disrespect meant, but yeah, we're proud of deep dish, but we've been doing tavern pizzas since the 40s.
Yes.
Flat, thin crust, classic thin crust pizza. Yeah. And my dad had for many years had a thin crust joint. Never went into pan or stuff.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so yeah, I was like, there are plenty of great thin crust pizza outlets in Chicago, and it's funny. There's even a Facebook group that. Specifically is like tavern style pizza and stuff. But anyway,
yeah, I went to before we go, we gotta talk about this food. I went to Portillo's, which was awesome. I had
great hot dogs, great beef sandwiches.
Yeah, I had the beef sandwich, which was phenomenal. I shared a hot dog. I was like, well, I already got the beef sandwich. I don't need to add a hot dog to that as well. But that was awesome. And I got to give a shout out to a little place. It was very much a hole in the wall, and I was with my group, and I think it was like 8 or 9, like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it was late. It was late, and everybody was hungry, and we missed everything. And my buddy was trying to find like just anything to eat that was like filling. And I found a place. It's called Burger Alley.
Oh, interesting.
And Burger Alley was like it's below a university. Like it's connected to a college, and it's right on the same block as the I think it's the Hilton in Chicago, the one that was in The Fugitive, which I was very delighted to be in. I was like, oh my God, I'm in the place. I got to go to the grand ballroom and yell at somebody and tell them they switched the samples. But this Burger Alley was just like it very nondescript, unassuming. But got a burger, got some fries, and it was like, I don't know. It's when you're hungry at 10 o'clock at night and you're in the middle of Chicago, like I was happy to have it. The pizza, the burger was good. I was like, and I'm sure it's very unassuming. I'm sure people are like, I never heard of that. I don't even know what that is. You could go to this, that, and the other thing. I got this place that's been around for 200 years. But I recommend it.
Hey, Portillo's makes a great hamburger as well.
Ooh, yeah.
But no, that's great, and I'll have to check out Burger Alley. I know Langley was asking if it's the UIC. It might be UIC.
I think it is. I wouldn't travel, by the way. I wouldn't travel to go there. But if you're like at C2E2 and it's 10 o'clock at night and you're like, I need to eat, and I don't want to pay, hotel lobby prices.
Yeah. Burger Alley. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. Well, tell me about your artist for the Terminator.
Oh man, I wonder if I'm allowed to talk about that. It's so funny because like this was all predicated on the origins of this whole thing and where it came from and how it all came to be. I had been like kind of this is my way of telling a story. I tend to give the whole breadth, but I think I can firmly say that it's Colin Cracker. Colin Cracker is the colorist on the main book and is doing the pencils for my book. So,
great!
My backup. So there's a lot of continuity, and a lot of connectivity. But Cracker, I should say, Colin Cracker. Cracker is awesome. I've seen his sequentials are just awesome. Actually, Declan knows him personally, and I think he submitted or posted on Twitter recently an image that Cracker did of a Terminator, and it's like. That should give you everything you need to know. So just, check him out on Twitter. The marvelous Mr. C. But he's great. He's doing the art. But the whole thing came about because I was like, I had been aggressively pursuing the Terminator license in terms of I needed to know who had it. And for years, I had pursued it. And in fact, like one of the last Terminator books that I read that had come out was RoboCop Terminator Kill Human, which I believe was from Dynamite. And I read that, and I was a big fan of the Frank Miller, Walter Simonson RoboCop Terminator crossover as well, which is ridiculous. You could tell Frank Miller has. I was like, you'd think Frank Miller would watch Terminator before writing a Terminator RoboCop crossover. Clearly, he's like, metal robots, got it. Yep, because I know RoboCop, I got that covered. But this Terminator thing, I couldn't care less. But it's also just so ridiculous. It's bonkers. The RoboCop Terminator Kill Human book was more deliberate. It's very much a like sequel to Terminator, a reimagining of Terminator 2.
Okay.
But that book came out a long time ago, and I was like, where is the Terminator? Like, why hasn't there been one? Who has it? And I have inroads at different publishers, and I assume, I found out like Marvel didn't have it, DC didn't have it. They're not really getting into that kind of game right now, unless they're acquiring the entire damn studio. So I was like, okay, well maybe Dark Horse has it, or maybe IDW has it, or maybe Boom Studios has it. And each contact I had over there, I was like, do you guys have the Terminator license? And it wasn't necessarily they go like, no. It was always, I don't know. That's a good question. And then they'd look internally, and then I wouldn't hear back from them, and then I'd email them again, and they'd go like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't." And I'm like, "Well, who has it?" And they're like, "We have no idea." And then and I had worked with Nick over at Dynamite a number of times. He facilitated a couple of interviews we did. I finally got to talk to Christopher Priest on our channel, which is a feather in my cap that I've been pursuing for a good long time. I didn't know, by the way, that Christopher Priest used a pseudonym back in the day. That he was Owsley.
Well, no, it's the other way around. Priest is the pseudonym.
Is Priest the pseudonym? I always thought Priest was what he was.
No, Priest is Priest was a character in Superfly.
Oh, okay.
And Ron, I forget his name. The chat will probably remind me who played Superfly, but Priest was a character in there. And yeah, and this is a public story, so I don't feel bad telling
okay.
Priest's story. But he was married, and I believe the marriage was in California, and he got divorced, and there was a whole community property thing that technically his wife would still have a right to any not only past work but future work under the name Jim Owsley. So he became Christopher Priest to separate and say, okay, fine, she gets her share of the previous work, but yeah. It's,
interesting. Okay.
Oh yeah. And also, I'm just so happy for him that he's gotten these not only opportunities at Dynamite, but also DC as well.
I know.
And
the Superman books have been lost. Good stuff.
My God, Sal, did you read the whole of Superman Lost?
Yeah. I finally caught up on it. It's great.
Listen, truly, man, I think it was the best Superman story of last year. I really do.
That's a tough call because it's a great time to be a Superman fan no matter what, because there were so many good Superman books that came out. But that one was like, it was head and shoulders long, like, lockstep. You'd think, oh, I've never seen Priest on any Superman book before. I've never seen his style applied to this character. Not only did it work, but runaway fan reaction to the book as well.
I just appreciated, even though we all knew at the end he was going to be fine, but he managed to evoke this bleakness and futility on Superman's part to be so flung far away on the other side of the galaxy or a different galaxy. And just and also I liked the plot device of, well, we already saw him back, but now we're getting the backstory of what his life was like during that time, which, even though it seemed to be a blink of the eye for us on Earth, it was like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And God, I think the ideas, I think it was a very adult story in a very mature and not pervy way.
Yes, it wasn't exploitative at all. It was just a mature story. I mean, it was actually, I think it was more in line with what DC kind of like imagined the Black Label line to be. It was like, adult oriented but like mature themed stories under this banner. And then of course Batman Damned was like, that's the end of that. But yeah, I'm glad.
Well, I mean, they are doing other Batman Black Label stories, and I don't know. That's the one question I should have asked Priest. was if that was intended to be a Black Label story. But regardless, I'm glad that it came out, and really I think it's going to be a great evergreen story that people can pick up. But no, he's just brilliant. I didn't know he was making music. You told me the other day when we were talking about that.
Yeah, that's right.
That.
No, when we had him on the show, I was like, I was doing my research on Priest and all that, and I wanted to make sure, like I knew what to call him, because I know he doesn't like to be called Chris Priest. He prefers either Priest or Christopher Priest. But he, one of my like little, I want to call it like the hot ones kind of look up was like he had like a Motown record, and he had done like actual music. Which, by the way, you can find like on YouTube. Like you can listen to his actual like work, and it's pretty cool. It's rather groovy.
That's great. That's like J.M. DeMatteis. You could find his music and stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it's acoustic, but it's thoughtful, and I think it's terrific. Yeah,
that's cool.
It's great stuff. Ron O'Neill, everybody from Superfly, and I thank Ken for giving that. Excellent.
There we go. But apropos of the whole like getting Priest on the show, so I was talking to Dynamite as well, and we were doing all these things, and I was like, I asked, I think I inquired about Terminator, and they were like, we're not really sure. And then I saw an ad for the backer kit that was going to be the reprinting of all of the like lost Terminator comics work. And it was through Dynamite. And I'm like, oh my God. So my immediate email to Nick was just like, Nick, is this real? And he's like, yeah, no, we're doing a thing. We got the license, all that stuff. We're reprinting these books. And I'm like, that's fantastic. I want to help with that. But also, just unrelated, if I could do anything associated with Terminator, I want it. And I don't want it to be given, and I don't want it to be this kind of like, blurred line. Let's use my YouTube channel. I just, if you think, so I submitted a bunch of my work. I have a bunch of my old books that are all PDFs. So I submitted those to an editor, and he took a look at them, and he's like, these are actually not the worst thing I've ever seen. And so what they decided was we'll do a backup. And, it was going to be 10-page backup, 2 pages at a time for 5 issues, and we'll see where it goes from there. And so,
it's 2 pages at each issue. It's not a 10-page feature.
No. It's 2 pages of 10 pages per issue.
Wow.
So you're getting me in every issue of Terminator, which is why I'm like, no, pre-order the book. You're not just getting me like one time. It's my story carried out over 10 pages or 10 issues.
That's
like 5 issues.
That's like God damn it. UK Judge Dredd.
2000 AD.
2000 AD. I don't know why I couldn't think of the number like a moron. Like they're kind of, a lot of their magazines and stuff are 2-page and 4-page stories and stuff. How was it plotting each 2 pages, knowing that you had to obviously end on some sort of cliffhanger or something?
Yeah, I actually am no stranger to writing the web format, which is of course like you release a page or a story or a comic a day. And in my case, I was writing comics as a webcomic for a series that we titled Flight of the Binturong. I was encapsulated by this beautiful, adorable animal on, I think it was one of Conan's shows. And it's this amazing creature from Southeast Asia that smells like buttered popcorn and has a prehensile tail, and it looks like a big bear cat. That's why they call it actually they refer to it as a bear cat. But I was so encapsulated by this creature, it completely just like took my mind into other directions, and I wrote this like space horror fantasy adventure that is about a crew of like space truckers with a ship called the Binturong. And and because I had no success pitching my books, like people have mentioned in the chat already, I did a book, Garth Kirby and the Cookbook of the Gods.
Yes,
that was a book that was I was like, I need to make this book. I need to make it happen. It was a done-in-one that could have had franchise/sequel potential, but it was so expensive and hard to make. And if you want to talk about that one day, we will. But it's its own ongoing drama. But I made that to be a book and to be published, and nobody picked it up. So I was like, all right, I'll put the book out as a webcomic, the Flight of the Binturong story, and then build an audience, and then that audience will like just clamor to have it published in some kind of format. Neither of those things happened, but we did have a nice audience that was really interested in reading the series. But I had written it as a comic book, and then but with the mentality of it being a web comic and knowing that each page kind of had to be its own piece of content, and that was a real like struggle, because while it's coming out, you know it has to entertain for the person who's there right now. But when the book is done, and I had every intention of ending the book and not being like an ongoing, never-ending saga, I was like, this book is not... No one's going to care about the web comic reading experience when it's done. They're just going to want to read it. And so I had to kind of like break myself up web comic format and kind of just go, it is what it is, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And I think that if it's collected, it'll read weird if it has this like chapter break or cliffhanger after every single page. And so knowing that and having been through that already, and I want to say that was like 6, 7, 8, 10, maybe years ago, when it came to approaching this backup, it's 10 pages. The 2 pages are in each issue. And and it's not so much that I catered each issue to being a cliffhanger or to having this kind of like readability for each issue, but rather it's more like the essence of that, where I'm like, I understand that every 2 pages it's going to stop and you're going to have to get the next issue. But I'm counting on you reading all of it in one sitting. So I want you to have a complete story.
Okay.
Interesting. So it's not going to. At the very least, I was very aware where each page ended, and I didn't think, oh well, they're just going to have to deal with it if the last panels were weird or had this weird kind of like cliffhanger feeling. It should be narratively satisfying to read, whether it's 2 pages or 10 pages.
Okay.
That's that kind of thinking I was approaching to. But I definitely had that kind of mentality where I'm like, it does need to read both ways, but no one's going to care after it's done that it is readable 2 at a time.
I understand.
So I
get that.
So I think of it as more of an essence of webcomic as opposed to it being like written that way. But thankfully, because I had the experience of actually making webcomics in the first place, and especially long form comic books, sequential comic books as a webcomic, I was more suited to doing that anyway. And I guess I can tell the story because nobody works there anymore. And when I say nobody works there, I mean nobody who is working now is working where they were when I did it. But I was brought in at one point during one administration or another at Valiant to do a backup there as well. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was going to be really fun. And it's a real shame it didn't happen. But it ain't their fault. Nobody worked there in terms of their, but I guess I can share that. Like, it was going to be, the concept was, because they were like, back when I was working there, or not working there, when I was working with them on this idea, they were like, who in the Valiant universe would you want to write about? And I was like, obviously Quantum and Woody. That was my like immediate thing. I'm like, Quantum and Woody are my gateway, my intro. It's a third of my interview with Priest is about talking about his run on his creation of Quantum and Woody.
Sure.
And so I was like, I really want to do Quantum and Woody. And they had this idea that they pitched me. They were like, oh, so we're thinking about this idea for Quantum and Woody. And I don't want to give it all away because I don't know if it's being repurposed or if they're going to use it in any way. And so I don't want to give away too much more. But I want to make this a fun show because, people are here and they want to hear about like the behind the scenes drama and all this crap. So like, I'll share that at least. The idea was, I think it was a 5-pager, maybe 5 to 10. And the idea was that I'll have to look at it. They wanted it to play like a webcomic, but also be as a backup to a main story. So I had to think about that in that term anyway. And they wanted it to be every page was its own complete story, but still part of an ongoing narrative. And so I came up with this idea of like Quantum and Woody go to space. And so that's the story. And so each page is is a day in their adventure it's also got a narrative beginning, middle, and end for the adventure that they were in. And so that was the concept, and it got pretty far. It didn't get to art. And folks who don't know, it's like you assume, oh well, if it was close to being, if it got in any distance, there must be art. No, it had to get through pitch, script, rewrites, editing, approval, rewriting. We didn't even get close to seeing what it would look like. But it was a fun idea, and that actually conditioned me to write something like this, where I'm like, but thankfully I don't. It is not in that way, where it's like, it's its own complete story. But that's another little behind the scenes story about me working in the industry in any way. And so I just to point out, like, hey, I'm not out of nowhere doing this. It's not completely.
No, I get it. Well, hey man, Dynamite didn't owe you anything, so
no, they did not. Oh no,
yeah, if they like it and they're publishing it, that's wonderful. Gar wants to know if your departed partner Benny did an issue of Bloodshot.
He did a backup, with Bloodshot, and that's a very interesting story. I won't tell, but I will share that the concept, if you're ever interested, is. They approached him. One of the previous administrations of Valiant approached Benny about doing. Well, Benny approached them obviously, but the idea was that Benny wanted to do a story for them, and they pitches. And one of their ideas, they were, well, you're the comic story and you tell the stories. Why don't you write a kind of like recap of Bloodshot's origins, and then we'll do that. And so that was what it ended up being. And so it was kind of like, it's Benny's written word and his concept, but using the comic story and framework as a kind of template, which is a clever idea. And then that administration was no longer, and then the new administration took over and they printed the book. And so it's out.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yes,
it's got Benny's logo on it and everything, and that exists, and it's out there. And I know Benny really, really wanted to write comics, and that's something that, like, it's a real shame that he's not here to do that now, because he really wanted to do that. Like, that was something that, like, really mattered to him. It was something that really, like, it was an itch he wanted to scratch, and he was very quiet about it. He was very, like, he didn't want, like me, he didn't want, like, people to think that this was all, like, this whole enterprise was just some ruse to get someplace else to do something else.
I get it. Sure.
And it's something that I have very quietly pursued writing, because on one hand I do this for a living, this whole thing, and I love it. And despite my parents' suggestion, to do anything else, they're like, oh, I saw a thing in the paper, there's a possibility you could do something completely different and have a boss. And I'm like, why would I ever do that? I do this and I make a living, and it's a real living doing it. But I do this and I'm happy and I love it, and I'm my own boss and I create and I get to be creative and have fun, and I have, like, audiences that are so complimentary and kind. And even the worst of the job is a drop in the bucket of the awesome that I experience every day, and I love it. And I say it only because I don't want to conflate the concept. I want people to understand, like, I love what I do, and I do this for a living, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I didn't use it as an opportunity or a stepping stone to do something else. Like, this is the end game for me.
Well,
there are a lot of go ahead.
No, all I was going to say was that anyone who does this with any level of success will find that other doors of opportunity will open for them. Right. And there's a difference between a Machiavellian sort of means to an end, and I don't care how I get there, but really what I want to do is I want to write a comic book and whatever. Obviously, that's not the case. You've been doing a comic pop for almost 15 years now, right?
Certainly, yeah. I'd say it's certainly closer to 15 than it used to be. We're over 10. We're over 10 years now. So.
I knew it was over 10, and I kind of assumed that it was like 2009 or something that you started.
I mean, certainly, like, let's put it this way. I have my first New York Comic Con was 2006. And I think my second New York Comic Con in 2007 was as a press agent. Like I've been doing something related to comics and media, and commenting.
Who did you represent as a press agent?
Oh, myself.
Oh, I see.
I created a whole thing.
I see.
Although I will say, that might not be true.
When you say press agent, I assumed you were representing a company or a talent or something like that. But go ahead.
When I went to Baltimore, I ended up going for I don't think it exists anymore, but it was a pop culture website outlet called Sin City 2000. All scenes, and I wrote articles and just columns about comics, about video games and movies and all kinds of crap. And I heard about Baltimore because I went to school in Virginia. Like not the city, I've heard about the city before, but the con. And I really wanted to go, and I was like, oh my god, 3 hours away. I used to drive 6 hours in a day to go to college. I might as well do the 3 hours. I could drive down, I could bomb in the con for 4 or 5 hours, and then just drive 3 hours home, which I would never do today. But back in the day, that was a thing. Like that was the thing where I'd be like, I'd stuff my girlfriend in the car, and be like, let's go 3.5 hours, no problem. I mean, we'll have fun. We'll stop and get the barbecue.
You're describing me almost 35 years ago when I was breaking into boxing writing, and I would travel the Midwest to go to a fight, and whether it was Iowa or Wisconsin or Michigan, based here in Chicago, and I would go to cover Midwest fights that I knew would be good stories for Boxing Illustrated magazine, and I did it gladly, and also I had a tough 9-to-5 job at a bank. So it was a wonderful creative outlet, and especially that weird wilderness time for me between radio that I was doing downstate in Central Illinois to radio up here in Chicago. And also it provided me a body of work that I could take to the sports station and say, hey, I've been covering boxing all this time. You might want me on your station, and everything worked out as far as that goes. So
you put the seeds, you reap the whirlwind, my friend. You did it. Like that's so valuable is putting in that work. But it is work. It is a slog. It's fun, but it's a job. Well, it's a whole.
I felt like crusading reporter running around and stuff, and So, but back to you now. I'm excited. Let's talk about the Terminator. I guess mythos. Yeah, and So, have you enjoyed every movie? I'll be honest, I haven't watched the movie since T3
with
Christina Loken.
Yeah,
I was mildly curious about Salvation and Genesis and things like that, especially Genesis having the parallel world kind of. Am I right? Isn't there like kind of a parallel world thing going on with Genesis?
Genesis was I didn't see all of Genesis. I've only seen parts of it because I was just so appalled by the whole thing. I have really strong opinions when it comes to Terminator, Aliens, Predator.
I would imagine.
That Trinity is my wheelhouse. And it's so funny because I'm like, I like 2 of each of those franchises. Predator actually I like the most. Out of all the movies that have Predator in the name, there's only one I'm like, that sucks. But when it comes to Terminator, Salvation tried something. That might be the one to check out, even though it's directed by Mick G of Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. But it's still kind of fun. And it's worth it. Terminator Salvation birthed the Christian Bale Freakout audio.
Right.
Which has gotten me many, many hours of joy. Not at the expense of that poor guy, but rather just the references and I don't think a week goes by that I don't say something like da 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 like this in the background because Christian Bale was like making fun of this guy, like treating the whole thing like a circus. And then he realized he's freaking out because he's in Terminator Salvation. And you're like, what a dork. But yeah. When it comes to Terminator, that's one of those franchises that I like. It's in my blood. Like I bleed oil when it comes to Terminator, and even though I really only like the first 2. But when it comes to when it's Genesis was the concept is a Terminator goes back in time and they disrupt the other movies. Like the Terminator goes further back and teams up with Sarah like before Terminator 1, and then they ruin Terminators 1 and 2. Like that's the concept.
So it's a bad end game essentially.
Yeah,
with them going back in time and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like it's almost neat. Like there's sequences in it that I'm like, that's kind of a neat idea. Like I like what would happen if a nerd who loved Terminator needed to kill the T-1000 without like in 10 minutes instead of getting a whole movie. And seeing that sequence, I'm like, that's neat. But also, it's not Robert Patrick. The T-1000 was unstoppable. Beating Terminator or the T-1000 in 10 minutes kind of undermines and demeans the second movie, which is arguably the best in the franchise. How dare you? Like,
I would agree.
So much I don't like about those. But when it comes to Terminator 1 and 2, like, I think Terminator 2 may have been one of the first like R-rated movies I ever saw. Terminator 1 is a movie that I like used to bring with me on vacations that had VCRs back when I was a kid. Like, it was. Yeah, I love the whole like everything about it, from the synth music to the practical effects and the early like CGI to the acting to the human interest. Just all the Cameronisms that are in there are just they just scratch me right where I itch. It's such a world that I love, and I like the time travel as well, like the concept of like when you go back, you're stuck there. You don't necessarily like. You're kind of like leaving your timeline.
The rules of time travel in the Terminator universe.
Exactly. Although my co-host Ethan and I will argue till the sun comes up over like how that works and why and how it doesn't. And he gets caught up on the whole like you would change the future. Like, where did you come from if you changed your own destiny, having gone back? And my point is like, but it's more like the Hulk in Endgame, where he's like, your past becomes your future. You can't affect the future now that you've changed the past. Like you have divorced yourself from the timeline you left. Like you're physically here. It's not like the universe is magic, like Back to the Future, which I do also love, but like Back to the Future, you go back in time and you unmake yourself. You have a dramatic and tension-filled Alvin Silvestri scored amount of time to solve that problem before you are eradicated. Like it's very convenient. It's very almost magical. Like the universe is like giving you a chance to fix it. I like the idea of like, no, I physically lived here. I left that timeline. I'm over here. I'm physically here. I might unmake my own existence if I kill my grandpa, but that doesn't stop me being here. And even though it does stop me from having gone back in time, I'd already been sent through time. Like the point is, I hope I'm not there to be sent back. I'm here now.
No, I get it.
It breaks your brain because then you think about like all of how it works, and it's just but like the other thing is the beauty in its simplicity, where it's Cameron's like, why are you arguing with me about this? Who cares? It's dope. And I'm like, that is another element that I like have learned to respect deeply, is like the dope principle, the concept of like, it needs to hold water enough for you to love the characters and get invested.
Yeah, by the story that's being told. No, to quote Miles O'Brien from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I hate quantum mechanics, and it's true. And I mean, no, it will bust your brain if you think about it too much. Or as Bendis would say, don't pull too hard on the threads, or the whole thing will fall apart. But again, and it's up to the viewer if you buy the concept or you don't buy it. I remember seeing the first Terminator movie when I was in college, and it was great. And I looked forward to T2, and T2 exceeded expectations. I agree. I think it's an even greater movie. I do think it's funny that we're living in a world where Skynet is getting closer and closer, and the whole AI thing. And I wonder if you and Deck, and you don't have to spoil, I'm not looking for an answer, but I would imagine we might see some Skynet things. Again, I don't even know how much is going to take place in the modern world and how much is going to be taking place in the future world, which technically, if we hold to the calendar of the movie, is only 5 years from now, 2029.
That's right. 2029. That's right. And that's the other thing is like, well, when it comes to what Declan is building, you're seeing like there's already art out for issue 4 and stuff like that, or issue 2 at least. You're seeing like a Terminator in the Vietnam War. Like you're seeing Terminators underwater. Like you're seeing it is about the characters the Terminator interacts with, or the Terminator of the story that they're interacting with in the modern day, or rather in the time that they are going to. We're not going necessarily right away to the dark future. Like
gotcha.
It's about whether we're gonna get there or not.
Which has always been the of what the Terminator stories has been. Can we change the present to avoid that future. So yeah, I can agree with that.
Yes, that's
Very
that's
cool.
kind of what it's all about, man. And
course.
and when it comes to like, yeah, when it comes to celebration of dates and everything, I mean, like August 29th, 1997 is of course the day that Skynet becomes self-aware, 2:14 a.m. I celebrate it every year. When I was a kid, like a very little kid, like way too young to see Terminator, my best friend at the time introduced me to it. He was probably even younger than that when he first saw it and brought it to me. And then, and it's such a like seeing Terminator 1 and 2 in the context of like a safe place with your best friend as children when you shouldn't be seeing it. It like broke my brain and made me like bleed blood and oil to the point where I'm like, I consider those two movies sacrosanct, and they're so important to me, and have kind of like guided my definition of like what cool is and what one can expect or hope to achieve through action adventure sci-fi. Like
there you go.
And so it's like just to have this kind of like rub up again. Like I was very content to just be like, I just want to rub up against the Terminator franchise in some way. If you can just, if I could tell, a variant cover artist what to draw, whatever it is, as long as I could be involved. And this is more than, and I was able to, because I got greenlit and we were, we gone through the whole process. And at this point, scripts have been submitted and it's all set to go. I was able to text my friend who showed me those movies and go like, it's happening. Like I'm doing one too.
That's great, man. That's excellent.
Yeah.
And listen, everybody watching and listening, I will be talking to Declan Shalvey about his the main feature of the book.
You should.
Well, Dec's one of my favorite people in comics, and I can't wait to talk to him about this and other subjects as well. Well, listen, we should because again, I understand that you can't spoil, and I don't want you to spoil. Remind people again of final order cutoff and release of first issue.
Absolutely. Folks. If you would like to pre-order this book, you need to do it before September 16th. So all you got to do is call your comic book shop and say, I want Terminator. And even if it's just the first issue, but like, I want Terminator coming out from Dynamite. It comes out on October 9th. So let them know. You can also do it through Previews World's website. You can select your comic shop, or if you don't live near a comic shop, you can always pick one like Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash or Midtown Comics. They can ship you a book.
That's true.
But yeah, when it comes to that, like, just pre-order your books when you want to see them succeed. And this could be an opportunity here for us to just kind of promote pre-ordering, because I think, like, even if it is largely self-serving, because I'm like, hey, pre-order the book, it makes me look good. But whenever you see a book that you love, that isn't a tentpole book like a Batman, a Spider-Man, that kind of thing, and you love it, and it gets in your heart, and maybe it's billed as an ongoing series, and then it turns out it only gets like 8 issues. The reason is because the book didn't sell very well, and the reason why the book didn't sell very well is because A, the companies didn't market it well enough, and B, people didn't pre-order the books, and the pre-ordering system is unfortunately the key. It's how books survive. And pre-ordering essentially is what you just you're letting your comic book store know ahead of time whether you're going to buy the book. And now that of course enters into an arrangement for you to be on the hook to buy the book every time it comes out. But it's when you don't overindulge in your pre-ordering, and you don't have like 50 books in your pull list, it's still manageable. But apparently that's the way it works. Like, that's the lay of the land. And I know I've gotten a lot of pushback on it, not necessarily on my book, but about pre-ordering in general. They're like, that's a kind of crappy system. If I want to get bread at the grocery store, I don't call the grocery store 6 months ahead of time and tell them I want my bread on like November 20th. That's not how anything works. And I completely respect that. But it is how this very niche entertainment industry works. And until you aren't going to change the system by bucking it. Like, your books are going to continue to get canceled. Your books are not going to get like in the hands of the people who need them if you don't at least play ball. It's a shame, but that's how it works.
No, I'm with you, man. Where do you, because honestly, talking to a lot of my creator friends and other observers, they're wringing their hands about where the comic book business is right now. I don't know what you think. I mean, again, I think, every one of the not DC and Marvel companies, obviously the challenge is to survive and to make a profit in things. But I also think, again, I think we're getting great product, and I think we have been for the last, 20, if not 25 years, where a lot of really good books and a lot of adventured genres that weren't normally chosen. And I mean, it's interesting. Have you ever had Rob Selkowitz on your show?
No.
Do you know Rob? Rob is a
Not
he writes
biblically,
for
but I've heard
Forbes.
of him.
Yeah, he writes for Forbes and covers the nerd world, and he also writes for ICV2, Milton
Gotcha.
Grief's publication. And he's a great observer. And he wrote a great book about 15 years ago, and was like, "Are we really just gonna just totally become, because of the movies and TV shows, this front of mind kind of business, or are we going to see it kind of bifurcate to DC and Marvel doing their thing, and all the other publishers, hit and miss when they come out with stuff?" And I think obviously that's where we are. And I also think that, again, I think they play to their strengths. I think they are smart to avoid, hey, we're going to do our own superhero line. I mean, and it's, hey, man, Valiant had its moment, and others have had their moments with superheroes. But honestly, I'm much more excited when an Ahoy or, Aftershock, when it was active, and then some of the other companies, certainly Vault, and,
Like
things
Mad
like
Cave,
that. Absolutely, Mad Cave. Mad Cave's killing it lately.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think these other companies are doing great. And I'm glad you mentioned Mad Cave, because truly, the Flash Gordon book, and this is what I'm looking forward to with the Terminator book too.
Yeah.
You got top flight creators making those Flash Gordon books from art and story standpoint. And it's like, okay, you don't just have the license, you're really trying hard. Dynamite's James Bond books have been excellent, I think, for example.
I like him too. And it's funny because, it's Garth Ennis, so he's very hit or miss when it comes to like everything at this point. And when I say hit or miss, I just mean like some folk like him and some folk don't. And I get it, because I am Preacher is like, I think, like an American classic. Like, I think that book, not that, he's not American, but like it's American. Like, I think that it's up there with like The Natural as far as like an actual like American myth. It's like a piece of like work, like literature. And I don't care much for The Boys.
Okay.
But like his TKO Sarah book was incredible. His war stuff is always great. And that James Bond book was, I think I call it like oddly restrained, because here's an opportunity, right? Because Garth Ennis is no slouch when it comes to gratuity and gore. And that at least I suspect that Dynamite wasn't like, they really scale it back. Like they were probably like, go for broke, tell your James Bond. And when you pitch Garth Ennis as James Bond, a couple things come to mind. You think about how James Bond is a franchise. When you're a kid and you hear about the James Bond franchise, like, oh, you're too young to watch it, or you're starting to watch it, and there's all these characters in suits in boring, bland 70s rooms, and it's just, I'm like, when does it get controversial? Like, when is it getting cool? And then you grow up and you one intrepid Thanksgiving, you see 10 of them in a row, and you go, "Oh, it's dumb." Like it's not, it's not complicated. It's just that
Not complicated.
But also, the concern is like, he's a womanizer, and there's all these different like provocative nature of the story. At the end of the day, he sleeps around and he murders people.
That's right.
Quentin Tarantino's James Bond, it would be a lot more extreme. And when you say Garth Ennis doing James Bond, I'd say it's 10 times more extreme than anyone else's version of James Bond. He's gonna do all the F's, and he is gonna get that book like onto some restricted lists. And yet, it's like he just likes James Bond and was like, well, I don't want to get gross with it. I'm just gonna tell my story. And it's like, and it's also kind of accurate. Like, Ian Fleming's James Bond, he's kind of a racist. And
absolutely, he was a racist. Sure, he was.
And so as a result, like but what's funny is he's racist against like Italians in the comic book. And I'm like, you know what? As an Italian American, I'm like, not that I forgive it, but I'm more like,
hey.
I was surprised. I was just like, oh, that's where we're going with this. Okay, like
it's like Michael Caine in the Austin Powers movies and his hatred of the Dutch. Yeah, the Dutch.
Yeah, it's like,
And,
oh, what an odd flag to plant. But yeah,
I
but,
suspect
yeah,
that
and the
Garth
book
can't
is
go that he can't go as far as maybe he wants to. That's again another great question we got to ask Garth the next time we have him on.
I think,
But my suspicion is it's not Dynamite. It's more the Fleming estate or whomever, or the Eon people, whomever is the vetting office for Bond when
Right.
you're submitting. And it's not just been Garth, because truly, I think Andy Diggle has written great Bond stories. I think Philip Kennedy Johnson and Jeff Parker have written great Bond stories as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I know, talking to Parker in particular, he was telling me that, again, again, whomever is the rights holder, they have notes and they are going to check your story out and be very, going through it with a microscope and stuff. And that's fine. That's their character.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about that myself in this particular case, where I'm like, oh, like, not that I'm surprised, but more I'm like, I was a little worried. Not that I was going to be told no a lot, but certainly I was worried because it has to go through that filter. And any franchise, any IP that's being licensed, that's made into it's being adapted into any kind of publicly traded forum that has any media or publicity behind it, they're going to want to make sure that the integrity of their asset is preserved. In this case, I haven't really encountered much resistance or oversight. They seem, not that they're like cavalier, but rather just like they want to be heard, or they want to they want to oversee it, but they seem down for the vision, and I'm like,
good,
that's dope,
excellent. That's great to hear. All right, to wrap things up, I want to ask you about a couple recent streamers. Also, I have to confess, everyone, I have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet.
Oh my God! How could you not see Deadpool and Wolverine?
I know. Shame on me.
You're busy with. Come on.
Life got in the way. What can I say?
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
But I have every intention still to see it on the big screen rather than wait for it to stream or anything. What did you think, without spoiling?
Oh, I loved it. It was fun. It wasn't like it's interesting. People were making comparisons to it, like No Way Home, and I would not agree.
Okay,
because but in as much as I can say, they're both indulgent multiversal romps, but they're both about something else that is important to the titular characters, which is all I can ask for at this point.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, at this point, if the damn movie with the colorful action figures has something to say about the world, about their perspective on the world, and I can get some cool action figures, like smashing into each other, I had a good time. Like,
all right.
So
that's all I'm looking for, is a good time. It doesn't have to be, and it is a good time. The Deadpool movies are pretty light fare as far as heavy duty stories and stuff. So I'm cool with that. The only thing about the second movie that annoyed me was that kid, and he was supposed to be annoying, but it was too goddamn annoying. Yeah,
I don't understand him as an actor. Like, I saw him in something before that, and I was like, oh, he's not very good. And then I saw him in Deadpool 2, and I went, oh, no, he's in this, too. And then I saw him in a movie about Santa Claus, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's just not very good. And then he disappeared. I think he's in a movie that's coming out that's made by one of the guys from SNL. Like, he's doing a movie about Y2K. And I'm like, oh, it's him again. Well, good luck with that. I don't care for him either.
I got to be honest, man, and it's another thing I wanted to talk about. I promise, James, we will get to Cape Crusader in a second. But all the fallout from the Acolyte and the fact that Disney's not continuing another season, I got to be honest, man, I couldn't stick with it. I found myself indifferent, which I think is worse than I hating
it. Yeah,
and it's like I just don't care. And no disrespect to the actor who plays the Acolyte and both sisters, but I don't think there was a lot of strong acting there. And in fact, even others in the cast, I'm like, this isn't a great cast. I'm not feeling it for this story.
Mm-hmm.
I want there to, much like Andor, I want there to be other aspects of the Star Wars universe explored. I just think, unfortunately, this was not a great story and great acting of said story. So
Yeah, my indifference
so I bet-
has really gotten me to the point. I didn't even see the Acolyte because I was like,
There you go.
I got really burned out. Not and it's not Disney's fault. I got burned out after the prequels, baby. Like it was just, you know, and the further away from the prequels I get, the older the generation that grew up on the prequels becomes, and the more it's their franchise now, and so they're more authoritative. So it's like for every reference, olive branch callback I get, there's 6 more for the prequels, and so I'm just like, it must be what it's like to be an old man. Like it must be what it's like to be 80, right? Because where it's like the world has passed me by. I look around and I see, you know, but thankfully it's only with Star Wars, where I look around and I see a world I don't recognize and that isn't for me and that no one is catering to me for. And rather than like make a show dedicated to how much I don't like it, I'll just casually and quietly exit stage left. You know, like, okay, Star Wars has left the building as far as I'm concerned. Knock yourself out. Make all the Boba Fett shows you want because they're horrible. But maybe they're not. Maybe I'm just not the right audience for it anymore. I certainly learned better than to say any authoritative opinion about Star Wars in public anymore.
Well, everyone knows my Star Trek opinions do not hold me from.
Well, thankfully, Star Trek is so niche. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as anyone's talking about, like, if you're talking about Star Trek is happy you're doing it. They don't care what you're saying as long as you're just talking about it. What a.
I think you're right.
I watched a little bit of. Yeah, no, I can't. Star Trek is one of those things where I'm like, I understand why they don't make it like they used to, but. Can't you?
Why do you think they don't make it like? Wait a minute. Why don't you think they make it like they used to?
Okay. A number of reasons why they don't make Star Trek the way they used to. For one thing, TV is dead, and so as a result, you don't get to tell long, expansive shows. You have to do eight episode movies, and hope that they renew that for like another 8-episode movie.
Okay.
For another, the industry sucks. Like, and I don't mean like it sucks. Like, I mean, it sucks for everyone, and it sucks for the people who are in it. Like, it sucks for the writers, it sucks for the producers, the directors. It's a smaller industry, and because of the death of television, people who would normally be hired to make shows that cater to their sensibilities aren't. And so people are taking jobs where they can get them and trying to cater them to their sensibilities and their ideals. So, like, look at The Witcher, right? You've heard, I'm sure, people who worked on The Witcher being like, I didn't read the books, I didn't like the games, I don't actually give a crap about The Witcher, I just wanted to write a story about this. And I'm like, well, then you're in the wrong bullpen.
Franchise. Yeah.
Right? But it's not like they get a choice. It's not like, well, as it turns out, like, I thought I wanted the job. I went to the Witcher writing room and I started working on it, and they were telling me all this lore, and I was like, I'm sorry, I just want to tell a story about like a sad girl who's coming home from, like, you know, or who's coming to the big city with a heart full of dreams. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, okay, but that ain't what this is. I'm not saying
right. Don't call it The Witcher. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The Witcher. But like, there's no job for you if you quit The Witcher. Like, you're just gonna have to be a barista or something. Like, there's no other option for you. And so it's like, well, I'm gonna choose either to be a staff writer on a show, or I'm gonna not be a staff writer on a show. And that ain't no choice at all. I understand that, like, at that point, well, I guess I'm writing for The Witcher. That's a shame, and it sucks for everybody involved as a result of that, right? Like, that's and so I think Star Trek is an example of that, where it's like, hi, we're Paramount Plus. We shouldn't exist at all. I spent $1 trillion to make a competitor for Netflix that would never succeed, that should never succeed, that will never turn a profit, that only owns franchises that, like, people under the age of 50 don't give two cents about.
Sorry.
And so it's like, okay, now make 10 Star Trek shows. Like, I'm sorry, none of this should exist. None of this should be made. And now you're trying to make 10, and you're not trying to make 10 Star Trek shows. You know, like, I think that Voyager and Deep Space Nine were that, right? That was like, oh, make more Star Trek. And it's like, yeah, that's why the first seasons of both those shows are really boring, because they're just like, well, make TNG, but not, but on a space station, or Lost. And
right.
But they're still TNG. Like, they're still gonna
right.
get
DNA of Star Trek is still in both shows. Yes.
And they're still gonna get 24 freaking episodes to figure it out.
Well, yeah, and again, you're absolutely. I agree with you that the streaming limit of a season, from 8 to 15 episodes is, again, you're cutting your legs out, because like you said, every great television show has its growing pains in that first season. And so I get that. Well, let's move on to Batman Cape Crusader, which I love. I thought it was excellent.
I don't have much to say. I only saw the first episode, and I was like, because I don't like Bruce Timm's interpretation of Batman overall. Like, I understand so many franchises exist that are attributed to one person that are actually the result of a team. Like, I thought I loved Firefly, and then I saw Serenity. And it's written by Joss Whedon, directed by Joss Whedon. There's no Tim Minear anywhere near that movie. And that movie is one long, self-indulgent episode of the worst written episode of Firefly, written by Joss Whedon. I was happy to have anything Firefly related, so I sang the Serenity's praises, but now I can say it's self-indulgent and it's Joss Whedon-y. The thing that I loved about Firefly was Tim Minear and Joss Whedon put together to make something. And also, like, the genius of people like Ben Edlund writing episodes, or I used to have her name right on the top of my tongue.
Mari Nixon?
No, it starts with a J.
Oh, Jane. Jane Esperson.
Yes.
I know my Whedon writers. Absolutely.
Yeah. But Star Wars is a New Hope, saved in the editing bay. And when I say that, I know people love to say no because they want George Lucas to like take back Star Wars, and I'm like, are you nuts? One person should not be in charge of the entire thing. They don't have they can't see the forest for the trees. And when it comes to like Bruce Timm, it's like, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and Kevin Altieri and Andrea Romano and Shirley Walker and so many more things that made Batman the Animated Series perfection. You can't do it again. You can't do it. The voice cast and alone. You can get some great actors, but again, why do people love Avatar: The Last Airbender? Andrea Romano was the voice director. Like, she's going to get performances out of people that she knows how to get that other directors just can't. Her not involved in that show. I mean, like, Cape Crusader. And again, it's a competent show. She retired. And I was like, why?
I know. Well, again, I mean, she did it for almost 30 years. As far as, not only Batman show, but all the subsequent DC animation and her body of work prior to all that. And even along with it, like things like the Boondocks and things like that that she did.
Yeah, no, I mean, look at the DC universe, the DC animated universe post Andrea Romano, and like part of the failure of those movies and shows is just how flat and dead those performances are. But
I like Cape Crusader. And also
that's not to crap on Cape Crusader. It's just that I was like, all people were talking about was like, I was Bruce Timm unfiltered, and I'm like, pass. Because I don't need Bruce Timm unfiltered. I've seen that. I have his art book. I know what's in there. But I like the show in as much as it is deliberate and it's thoughtful and it's moody and it has its moments. And I had fun watching the first episode, but there's nothing there that's like new or engaging that made me need to see the next episode. I could easily pass.
I understand. I really like it. I like it from an atmosphere standpoint. I even like, without spoiling, if people still haven't seen it, I even like some of the choices they made with villains that are radically different than what we would normally get in a Batman universe. Mm-hmm. And it worked for me. And that's surprising because sometimes when they do things like they did with one particular supervillain, I'm like...
In the first episode, Yes,
it's in the first episode, but again, it worked for me. I'm like, no, actually, I think this is strong. And also, beyond Bruce Timm, I'm a James Tucker friend and fan, and I'm a big fan of his work. Our as I was telling you off the air, Rucka and Mark Bernardin, and of course Brubaker being the story editor and essentially the showrunner from a story standpoint. I trust all these guys, and
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm thrilled that. I mean, I've always loved when Ed writes Batman. I think, and I've always loved when Greg writes Batman.
Hell yeah!
And you examples of that, so that's great. I really do. No, I really love it, and I'm really glad that it turned out well, and I'm glad that they've already said there's going to be a second season, because when they foist off these shows to different streamers, we're all sitting on pins and needles about Prodigy with Star Trek, which again I will reiterate is the best new Star Trek that is being made. And it would be a crying shame if we only get 2 seasons of this. And meanwhile, here's more live action crap. Sal, and really, I hold no responsibility for the actors. But I think I told you I did a Strange New Worlds panel with Celia Gooding and with Ethan Peck. Really nice people. And again, they're the end product. They get their scripts and they got to perform them. And I think they do them quite well. But I'm not crazy about the material they're given to perform.
Exactly.
So, but I held my tongue and I talked about all the positives, and thank God there was a room full of people that were dying to ask them questions. And I'm like, let me get out of the way and everybody enjoy themselves. I did ask them the one question, and it was great because it got an audience response. I think I told you this off the air. But yeah, I asked, do either of you consider Starfleet to be a military organization? And the crowd went, ooh. And I'm like, first of all, I love that reaction from the crowd. And I'm like, I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I just want to know, because again, and it's funny, Ethan said, no, I think it's a scientific body. Okay. And Celia said, I do think it's a military organization. So I got both answers. And I'm like,
it's so self-contradictory at this point. Like Star Trek, the motion picture, they are not a military. They're like hippy dippy flying around in space, just wearing their underwear. And then Wrath of Khan, everyone just got the memo, like, excuse me, but like we literally have military whistle, like we have naval whistles to get people to stand to attention. Like that, there is a stark contrast between like we are a science exploration vessel to like we are a military outfit. Now, maybe something happened between 1 and 2 that really like shook the hell out of the Federation and made them go, we need to get a handle on things right now. Make Starfleet like kind of in charge of everything. But yeah, no, and somebody in the chat brought up the exact same point that you brought up off mic, where it's the Coast Guard,
right? And that's literally what I said. Yes, and I agree. Yeah, Pete Weiser, who was there in my panel, and
there you
Pete,
go.
I'm glad I got to see it, Pete. But yes, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I'm like, they don't have to be the Marines, or even the Navy. It's like, but it's like, okay, we're securing, their example of the oceans and stuff, and our U.S. bodies of water and stuff. That's where the Coast Guard operates, and Starfleet operates like that within the galaxy and everything.
And it makes me wonder, though, like what their effect on Earth really is, because like I remember that episode right after Best of Both. No, was it Best of Both Worlds? The one where Picard gets saved from Locutus, and then he goes home, and
with his brother, with his brother. Yeah,
and like there's like a debate about like. I think it's like deep water exploration and stuff like that, but it's like that's not Starfleet. That's a separate private organization. And I was like, what's that all about? Like, there's actually kind of like a discussion on Earth where they're like, Starfleet is an option, but it's not like the option. And I'm like, that's interesting. I never thought about it like that. Like, I've been on the Enterprise for so many years. I never thought about life outside of the Enterprise and like what people consider to be like the authority. It's interesting. It's an interesting idea.
I'm with you, man. I'm absolutely with you. That's funny.
Let me ask you this, just apropos of Star Trek, really quick. We covered an issue of Star Trek X-Men Star Treks with an X in it from Marvel when Marvel had the Star Trek license, and they launched a book called a label, Paramount Comics. Did you ever read?
Yes.
All those Marvel Star Trek books. They launched like 8 series. Like they had a Deep Space Nine, a Voyager, a Starfleet Academy book, a double feature TNG and TOS series, one shots. And I saw like Starfleet Academy got to at least 16 issues, maybe over 20. And I was just like, what a time to be alive. to have this whole like series, and then of course it was unceremoniously canceled because like they lost the license and they stopped making those books.
In mid story. The book that I paid attention to was the Christopher Pike book.
Oh yeah, which of course like isn't that weird that they were like, let's do a book about like Christopher Pike being the captain of his vessel, and then Paramount Plus like, yeah, let's do that.
Well, again, when they introduced the character in the second season of Discovery, both new Star Trek fans and the old guard are all like, we like that guy. That guy represents your captain ideal. We want more of that guy.
Right.
And I think we've gotten it to a degree, but I also think that unfortunately, and maybe because he was having a baby or something at the time, but I really felt that Anson Mount, I guess, especially given that we only have 10 episodes, wasn't really a big player in a couple episodes. And it's like, I'm here to see Christopher Pike be the captain of the Enterprise. Right. I'm sorry. And I love Ethan Peck. I think he's a fine Spock. And I think Celia is doing a great job with Uhura and all the other characters. But it's like, I'm sorry. I like Chris Pike. I've always appreciated that idea of who was the guy before Kirk. And also that original pilot with Jeffrey Hunter, I think is a great Star Trek story. And he is very different from James Kirk. And he's burnt out and he's kind of pissed off and, everything else. Again, we'll see. But we'll find out next year when we see season 3. And I know season 4 has already been greenlit and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's just, there's so much I can't like. I don't have the bandwidth for it.
I get it. No, you're right. I think all these franchises are being, and forgive me, everybody, I can't think of a better word because there's a positive way to exploit something and there's a negative way to exploit something. But they treat these things like widgets, and there is no heart to their attempts to replicate what we've loved in the previous TV shows or films. I would throw Lord of the Rings in there as well, and what Amazon has tried to do with Lord of the Rings. And it's like, sorry, I don't know who you're hiring, but they're missing something. They're really missing the secret ingredient. I would say that about Star Wars and Star Trek.
It's really... go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's a shame, and I don't think it's that hard to figure out. I think they want to, especially in the case of Star Trek, they want to focus on the whole society now. And while I agree, boy, here's the big essay thing. I respect the idea of, I want to see myself in this new show. I want to be seen. I get that. That's fine. But I think in the cases more so of something like The Acolyte, it's done to the exclusion of other groups. And it's like, well, I don't know. I liked Voyager and Deep Space Nine because you had women and you had people of other colors and you had a bunch of males and females, and every creed was represented, and they were all working together, and nobody was diminished. And I do think sometimes in some of these projects, and you can connect the dragons, I see House of Dragons. You can connect the dragons and know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and again, it's like, no, I think that's great. But again, not to the exclusion or demeaning of other people. Yeah. And it's sorry, I don't think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, but it's all about intent at the end of the day. And when I say intent, I think I don't begrudge necessarily the writers to the point where they set out to ruin franchise X.
Of course, they're not trying to ruin it. Yeah.
It's really about the intent of the license holders and what they want to get out of the IP. And in the case of Star Trek, it's like we need product that comes out on this service that shouldn't exist. Like by all rights, it shouldn't exist. And now we need to fill it with content that also shouldn't exist. And so it's just like collapsing under the weight of its own ineptitude, and to bring it all the way back. When it comes to like stuff like Terminator, it's been tough. It's been tough to see interpretations of that franchise because at the end of the day, most of the time it's deeply personal and it's about like, whether it's the first movie, it's about love. The second movie, it's about love of that a parent has and what is capable of love. And 3 is about God knows what, making more money. But when it comes to this book, the intent is Declan Shalvey wants to tell a damn good, cool story. And I want to make sure that mine at least holds somewhat of a candle to that story by being cool and being about something and maintaining the integrity of the concept that came out that is inherent from the jump. For me, Terminator is so many things. It's a technical achievement. It's a special effects marvel. And yet it is also an engaging story that is about characters, and every character that you meet is fun and interesting and cool, even if they don't really have much to do. Those detectives in Terminator 1 are so great, and I love them, and mostly because it's Lance Henderson and the dude who plays the Darmok guy. But
Winfield,
he's also in Wrath of Khan. But they're so great, and they do so much with what they're given, but the stuff they're given is like an opportunity. I hope we're able to do that. Like, I hope that's for me. I would never do a book that I don't believe in or care about. This has been interesting because I've been challenged as a result of this. Like, I had another idea. It was too big. They were like, it's 10 pages. What are you doing? They were like, this is like a series. And I'm like, all right. Well, how about this? And then they were like, we're not going in that direction, but hang on to it. And then we went in this direction, and it was just like, it's all about like me learning the ropes, me experiencing what it's like to be in the industry, and also still managing and maintaining this story that is hopefully as cool as possible within the framework that we're given, and maintains that integrity that I want to see out of this franchise. So
there you go.
There you go.
Absolutely, man. Well, again, everybody, final order cutoff for Terminator #1 is September 16th, and first issue comes out October 9th.
That's right.
And again, lead feature by Declan Shalvey, and 2-page backups with a 10-page story coming from our own Sal Crivelli. So well done, dude, and I'm excited to see it, and good luck with it, and I hope it only opens the door to more opportunity for you. But, keep up the fine work with Comic Pop. We all appreciate it. And I know a lot of Comic Pop fans are in the live chat right now, which is great. And
thank you. If I may, I want to thank the audience for being so supportive. And the reason why I even brought up the whole earlier, I brought up I do this job. I like this job. I would never do it in lieu of something else, nor would I use it as a stepping stone or like a launch pad to do something else. This is an opportunity that I was granted, more or less, that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But make no mistake that I love this job, and I love you guys for being here and for supporting me and for being so supportive. And I just, if you like it, buy it. You know what I mean? Like, I will ask that you pre-order the first issue, but like, if you don't like it, I'm not going to begrudge you. I hear you. I don't want to put it in. I don't want to make it a kind of. This is not a transaction experience. I'm grateful for the audience to give me this platform to do what we do here today and what we've done for the last decade. And this is just something else, just another thing. But it's there's no requirement. So
I get it, buddy. No, that's great. Great to talk to you. Stay in touch, and maybe we'll do something at the end of the year and kind of.
We gotta headline a panel, man. We should do that. That'd be dope. Right?
Yeah, but if not, I'm content, Sal. Truly, like you coming on here, I'm happy to come on your channel as well, and us having a nice discussion. Because truly, at the end of the day, we get more viewers and listeners than a couple hundred people in a panel room. And also, we don't have to stop at 45 minutes and get out of the way for the next panel and stuff. That was my one frustration, especially talking to the Star Trek people. I'm like, can't we have a 2-hour panel? My God, because truly, and especially the deep. I mean, no disrespect to Ethan Peck and Celia Gooding and everything, but are you kidding me? I had 3 of my favorite people in Andy Robinson and the Not Visitor and Armin Shimmerman, and I'm like. Can't we just hang out at Quarks and talk for an hour? That would be terrific. So, but I got my fill, thankfully. So
good.
Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking to Ed Cato of Retropop and Tomorrow's magazines. Ed is taking over for Michael Urie, who is retiring. And if you don't know Retropop, it's a fantastic magazine that is all about great pop culture from the 20th century. And, it's, I won't deny that it is some of my favorite reruns that I still think about And Ed has written some great stories over the years, as have others like Robert Greenberger and Paul Kupperberg have contributed to that magazine as well. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Ed. And also, he's got some Captain Action news because he's the licensor of Captain, or the licensee of, he's got the franchise, and he just put out a new mask and costume for Captain Action. It's the Rocketeer.
Oh, cool.
So, which I think is fantastic. It's a fantastic design and a great way to dress up your action figures. So we'll talk about that and more tomorrow night. Until then, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.